Episode 37 of the What Not to Do show with Danny and Gino.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are and wherever you are watching this. We are very happy to have you coming to you live from Tiger's World.
Tiger's World. Our man Anthony Gonzalez, owner of this fantastic fight gym. Obviously, you can tell, take a look around, see the bags. And we are incredibly privileged to have his sponsorship, his collaboration, as well as our good boy Johnny.
Johnny in the back, say hi, bro. Hello. That's Johnny Torres, Falkenberg Productions, doing it for us really, really good. We're very, very excited to have him.
We are.
Hello, Mama.
Mama.
We love this.
Love me some Mama.
We love me some this. You know how many questions I get about, what are you talking about? Who's Mama? And
are you kidding me? Have you not met Mama? My Mama? Come on now.
And if you know, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You know, you know.
That's exactly right.
You know what I tell them? That maybe you should have a little patience.
Maybe you should have a lot of patience. Let's go with that. Let's go with that instead of a little patience. And that leads us right into what we are going to talk about today,
yep.
Right? Which is patience. Man, we're going to go hard on this one today because we live in a time where patience is talked about but is not practiced or well executed by any stretch of the imagination. And I think there's a myriad of reasons for that, but we're going to take a deep dive. And first and foremost, start with communication, right? Having patience when you communicate to somebody else. And it's not what you want to say, it's the listening part, right? So Danny, let me ask you.
Here we
do
go.
A lot of speaking, right?
Yes.
We do a lot of speaking. What is the most difficult part about being patient when somebody else is talking and you want to interject, right? What is hard and difficult about it? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I've had a couple of relationships where why don't you just go ahead and talk all over me?
You? No.
I get so excited, I guess, about what I want to say.
I get it. No, I get it.
And the thing is, I think and read fast.
Right.
So I feel like I got what you're trying to tell me.
Right.
I've processed it. I'm
right.
ready to, and you're not even done talking. Mm-hmm. And I'm right. I knew what I got what you were telling me,
right.
But it's kind of rude.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing, right? Everybody, we want to speak up. We want to say our part. And more importantly, we want to be heard.
Yeah.
Right? We want to make sure that, listen.
That's it.
No, it's a big deal, right? Because how many of us, and men, I'm talking to you right now, right? How many times has your beloved other half talked to you and you're like, yep, yes, honey. So you're hearing, but are you actually listening to what it is that your partner or someone who's of significance?
Yeah, but is that patience or is that something else?
So that's really good, right? Because the idea of being patient with the other person to let them say what they want to say, to then have the control, right, to then communicate what's appropriate for an appropriate response in that particular discussion, right? So do I think it's patience? I think patience is a part of it, right? But let me ask you this. In all the different roles that you have held to date, right? When someone sends you an email and you don't respond within a couple hours, right? What's typically...
My response?
No.
Or their response?
They send it to you. You're like, yeah, I'll get to it, right? You don't get to it till the next day or the day after.
There we go.
Oof. People. Why? Where is the patience come into play? So I sent it, right? But there's a timeline. It's a fictitious timeline, by the way, that's established in their brain of, I'm going to send it, and I know he's got his phone, so he'll check it and he'll respond right away. And then you don't. And then what ends up happening?
Then you end up a day in the life of Danny and his son, Tony.
True story.
I'll send him a message, and I'm like trying my hardest to be that patient, nurturing father. And when you know this dude lives with his phone in his hand, it's within reach at all. It's like in the Army, you had to have your gun within two arms lengths away.
Right.
It's like within 2 inches away from his existing phone in his hand. So then when I text him and there's no little bubbles, I'm like, it's okay, maybe he's not around his phone. Oh, nothing. And then by hour 2, I'm looking at the phone, I'm tapping the phone. I'm like, did this thing go off? Does it work? Did the message not go through?
So, okay. So you're talking about your son now, right?
Yeah.
But let's think about relationships for a
Yes.
second. When you, especially when you first start dating somebody, right?
Boy.
You so then there's the build-up, right? What am I going to say and how am I going to say it and how she's going to respond to it? And then you send it. And then you're waiting. Hour goes by, 2 hours go by, 5 hours go by, day goes by, no response, right? Why do we put ourselves through that emotional turmoil of, what is she thinking? Maybe I shouldn't have said it. Why do we do that?
Why? Because we have been ingrained since we were young to the speed of our times. Our parents and our grandparents and our grandparents, they all grew up and everything was slower.
Absolutely.
You send a piece of mail, you might not hear back a couple days, couple weeks. I mean, think about it, in 1700s, it could be months before you heard back, right? But today we're so speed. The social media is called Instagram.
Right.
By the way, that's a third Instagram reference in 3 podcasts. I would like some royalties. I mean, can I get a sponsorship?
They're not giving you a dime,
Nothing,
dude.
Nothing.
So what I find particularly fascinating about this, right, is expectations, right? Because not having patience, right, is a direct result of certain expectations that were set somewhere down the line. I'll give you a prime example, right? I remember when the internet first came out, right, and especially in-home internet, and old dial-up, right?
Yep.
Look, man, there was no Wi-Fi. You had this big cable, you plugged it into your laptop, not even laptop, we didn't have laptops back then, whatever they call PC, right? You plug it into your PC, and you go to dial-up, and it's all these noises, right? And you're waiting for about 90 seconds, and then finally you get online, right? Now, you walk into a coffee shop, automatically you're hooked to Wi-Fi, right? The difference in the expectation of, if I were to take a 20-year-old right now and take them back to 1995, 1996.
They'd go crazy.
They'd go
crazy.
Bonkers, right? But what's the consequence? What's the consequence of having this immediacy, this culture of now? What are we losing?
A lot, because it's trickled into every single part of our life. Everything from when you're at the store, the immediacy. When you want something at your house, Amazon can get it to you almost the next day.
Yeah.
In our relationships, in our friendships, at work.
Right.
Think about this, at work, the expectation of being able to produce a ton of stuff immediately, you know, it's not realistic.
It's not realistic,
It's
right?
not.
But we live in this world. Literally, it's fictitious and they're false expectations, but that's the pace at which society is keeping right now. The ability to stop and give yourself the opportunity to think about what's going on, why you carry that expectation in the first place. That of itself requires patience,
absolutely.
right? So patience gives you the ability to be a little more strategic, to be a little more meaningful, right? To be able to take a deeper look, instead of keeping it at 6 foot across, 1 inch deep, let's not go 6 feet across. Let's go a foot across and 6 feet deep. I think that's a big thing that's missing nowadays, and it's because we don't take the time to understand the meaning of things.
Of anything.
Right? It's just do it, get it done. Do it, get it done. Do it, get it done. As opposed to, why am I doing it? Right? And if I do it, is there a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it? This is one thing that irks me to no extent, and bear with me for a second. So right now, in the current time that we live in a time of rationalization. We rationalize every single thing that we do,
Every
right?
single thing.
The idea of living in absolutes. There is absolutely a right way to do something, and there's absolutely a wrong way to do something. Now, let me repeat that. Absolutely a right way, absolutely a wrong way. Where the confusion takes place is, but there's different ways to do things with the same outcome. Granted, what are the principles that you're following? Because right now we live in such a smorgasbord, such a blend of different principles, different types of people who rationalize every single thing that they do. In their mind, they're right. No matter what, I'm right. Without taking the time to have the patience to understand why they may not be right.
All right, back up. So you're saying you would rather everyone live in absolutes?
Absolutely.
That was.
You like that, huh?
Wow. I think the show's over, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming out. Absolutely.
Think about it.
Why?
Right? If you were to take a look at it, and let's have a serious discussion about this. Go back to 9/11. Right? Was it absolutely wrong?
9/11?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever met an American who has rationalized why 9/11 was right?
Some, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, are they considered an outcast?
Outlier.
Outlier. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fair, right? So the idea of saying there's such a thing as absolutely right and absolutely wrong, and everywhere in between, right? And actually, from an attorney, this would be interesting. I'm curious to see your feedback on this. The rationalization of the interpretation of what you're doing and why you are doing it, right? It creates a lot of convolution.
Sure.
Now, when you have convolution and you have a population of folks who don't take the time to communicate well, who don't have the patience to be strategic on what they're saying, to root themselves in their principles because they don't understand
themselves
in the first place, because they're going so fast, they don't have the time to take a deep dive to really understand what it all means, right? When you have all this rationalization taking place, listen, before you know it, you've got people rationalizing why it's okay for pedophilia to be a thing, right? Which I have seen.
Well, there are people that rationalize that.
That's exactly right. So to answer your question, would I prefer there to be absolutes? 110%. When I think of the founding fathers, when they founded this country, when we take a look at our Constitution, are there absolutes? I think there absolutely are. There's a lot of absolutely's going on.
Yeah.
Right? Anyways, I digress.
But, so like, so you're saying like freedom of speech, that's an absolute?
I think it is an absolute.
Except we make exceptions.
Why do we make exceptions?
We make exceptions when people's rights conflict, right?
Okay.
And so we need someone to kind of, that's where judges come in, right? And
Judge
you have
Alvarez.
someone decide like a prioritization of rights.
Okay.
So you can't, you can't yell bomb on an airplane anymore. Maybe you used to be able to, but now that fear can paralyze a nation, that it could affect an economy. So we say your right to your freedom of speech does not outweigh everyone's right to privacy, freedom, their right to travel, all that kind of stuff. The clearly right to travel is not in the Constitution.
Right, but we're talking about, in a court of law, your ability, someone's ability, who is in a position to interpret and speak to the law, right? For you and your experience and what you've seen, have you ever seen cases where people who were guilty, right, got off?
Yes.
And they were proven, okay. Is that problematic?
It is.
Why?
Well, because for the people that were seeking justice, right? Society needs that justice,
Absolutely.
right? Because we don't operate without the expectation of some sort of fair and balanced judicial system.
Right.
And so people think they're not going to get a fair shake.
Right.
Why invest in a civil society?
Right.
So it's problematic. But at the same time, most of the time, most of the reasons that people that were guilty walked was because the system, right? Something in the system failed to protect a right, to protect a procedure, to protect a facilitation of those things. So it's not that the person got away with it, it's that the system wasn't followed, or a procedure or rule of evidence wasn't followed, that kind of stuff.
So, for example, attorney-client privilege,
Yeah.
right? In an absolute world, right? Lying is wrong.
Right.
Right? Deceit is wrong. For an attorney to defend someone that they know is guilty, right? Which, listen, everyone's entitled to due process. I totally understand that. But living in a time where rationalization is the tip of the spear, what would be the consequence if that attorney knew that that person admitted to being guilty and they came and confessed and they said, listen, this person is guilty. They've confessed to me that they are guilty. Lying is wrong. Deceit is wrong. That's an absolute.
Okay.
Right? So living in a time, right, where you're defending, and we can just keep it an open-ended question, right? But things like that, where there is a rationalization, where you're dealing with things even within the system, right? It was designed based off a process of rationalization. No two ways about it. And then you said, okay, so what's the flip side to it from an absolute perspective, right? Okay, well, how do you know that absolute is the right absolute? Right? Well, what are the foundations? What are the principles? It takes us back. What are the original principles? I go back to 9/11. When you think about 9/11, this country came together in a huge way, right? Because you don't do that. There was a big no, you don't do that. Do you see the same type of bond shared, right, between and amongst Americans, the same way you did when 9/11 happened?
The further we get from it, the less.
People forget, right? So when I think about disjunctures and the way that there are separations, right, because there's not a shared doctrine, there's not a shared set of principles, right? We have the law, right, but if there is interpretations and rationalizations that can sometimes sway one way or the other, hence the role of a judge. And society, though, the individual person, if I know I can do something and get away with it, and I'm okay with it, is it right?
You tell me.
All right, well played, right? But the whole idea is when I think about how it is that we go from a time of rationalization to a time of absolutes, I think it's a very scary thing. Because when you look at how many young folks that are out there who have no direction, they don't know right from wrong. Because, hey, maybe my family says this is right, but society is telling me it's wrong. Or this group of friends I'm hanging out with, they tell me it's wrong, or vice versa. Think of the confusion. There's no conformity. And you're always going to have difference of opinion, absolutely. But the idea of saying there is a set standard for what is okay and what is not, right? That, to me, I do think is missing in a big way.
And that ties into patience.
Mm-hmm.
How?
All right, so when you think about when you're talking to someone who's constantly rationalizing their position, they're constantly rationalizing why they're doing what they say they're doing, and you are vehemently opposed to it, no matter what, are you doing yourself a disservice in that discussion and that conversation by wanting to constantly interject your rationalization, as opposed to, let me really get a grip on their rationale. Let me get a grip on their perspective so I can contribute something that is constructive to help them understand my perspective, as opposed to an immediate emotional response.
So I went and saw someone speak the other day, and she says, whenever she is listening to someone and she's like not agreeing, or she no longer tries to impose,
right,
she'll say something like, "That's interesting,"
Mm-hmm.
because when you, or really,
yeah,
that's interesting,
and
it makes someone go,
"Uh-oh." That's exactly right. That's exactly.
It's a level of patience that she's
is.
exhibiting, but it's really a teaching moment because she's not putting her values on that.
No.
But what if they're asking for your values?
Mm-hmm.
Now what? Do you wait or you jump in?
Are they ready to hear those values?
I don't know. A lot of times people will ask you for things, but they're really
not
not ready.
Well, and that's the whole thing, right? And so now it's in the delivery, right? And this is where, again, the importance of communication, how you are saying what you are saying and the content of which you are saying to the person you're speaking to.
Check this out.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you've given advice to someone over and over? They come to you.
Oh, man, yeah.
And then they keep doing the thing. Or they keep complaining about the thing.
Yes.
But you've already set out the road marks.
Yes.
The road map.
Yep.
This is what you should do.
Yep.
When do you lose your patience? Or do you lose your patience?
Okay, so I've been there, done that a bajillion times, and I've absolutely lost my patience.
Right.
No two ways about it, right? Is it the right move? No, it's not. That's the wrong move, right? Because ultimately, that person, it's their life. And I think that's a really difficult thing. When you're in a position to be didactic and be dynamic to teach someone something when they're asking for it, and then they don't take it. I mean, I have a great example. So I knew a guy who, from the time he left, graduated college, right, up to current day, he would always go to his parents and ask for advice. He would complain and ask for advice, right? Parents would give him advice, right? And it was great advice. He did the exact opposite. Right? I mean, every single time,
I've seen that,
right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, why the hell? Why are you asking for advice in the first place, right? And so, but you see that time and time again with people all over, right? And so, when I think about people who are seeking it, they want to have that additional perspective, but what they're actually looking for is affirmation in their current stance. And they want to say, yeah, but you don't see it the way that I do.
Back to the realization. Yeah, but.
Bingo.
Yeah, but.
Bingo.
And you know that, we should make a shirt that says, yeah, but with a line in the middle.
That's exactly
Johnny,
right.
can you write that down?
Yeah, we need to do that, John. That's
Johnny's
good
going to be our producer and our merch guy. Hey, go see Johnny the merch guy. And we're going to make a shirt for him that says, Johnny, I do merch.
I love it.
What not to do.
Man, I love it. But this is heavy, though, right? I mean, because there's a lot of layers to this. But when we think about the root of patience, right? First and foremost, I think it's really important. Are you patient with yourself? Because I'm a horrible critic of myself, man. I'm not. It is rare nowadays that I lose my patience. I think the last time it happened was about a year ago. And it was not a good situation, right? And so, but when I was younger, forget about it. I didn't understand the value of it, right? It was, it's not going to be this way, and I'm going to do it right now, right? Why? Time is the essence. As opposed to saying, there's a beautiful quality and characteristic to time, right? Not just for yourself, but for other people.
Right.
Time equates to process. When you let things have and follow the process that's been set forward, it's amazing what it'll do to people. But if you don't even give the time to let the process happen, how do you expect for real change? I'll give you this, Danny. What does it take to change the essence of a human being?
Oh, God.
There's no wrong answer.
A lot. Time, experience, pain, self-confidence, growth.
Experience, pain, self-confidence, growth. All things that take what?
Patience.
And?
Time.
Time. Right? So, but we live in a culture, it's a culture of now. It's a culture of right here, right now. To Danny's point, Instagram, right? Facebook, I'm going to post this, I'm going to check it, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours. How many likes do I got? How many shares do I got? That is a thing.
What about, like, here, you know, it just occurred to me, like, folks, the reality is most of the time, we don't know what we're going to talk about until we begin the show.
Yes.
So if you see like a revelation moment, it's happening right now.
No, we're literally we always shoot from the hip.
So education, experience, like.
Oh man.
People don't want to put in the time.
No.
Right? When they say, "Oh, you went to law school," that's so much schooling, and like now that it's way behind me, I was like, it really wasn't that much schooling. I'll do an analysis for people on becoming a doctor. I'm becoming a doctor, and I'll put in a bucket of time of if you only went to get your bachelor's, and then how much money you make, and if you go to become a lawyer, how much money you make, and if you become a doctor, and if you do the data, time investment seems long. Numerically, you catch up and surpass income-wise really fast. What you just needed was a little patience and perspective in that. Same thing in the gym.
Yep.
Hey, I've been working out. How come my guns aren't in?
Right.
Where's the gun show?
Right.
Bub, the gun show don't come in for like a year or two.
That's
you
exactly
know what I mean?
right.
When you're working out or you're trying to lose weight,
Man, that first month or two is horrific sometimes, mentally, because you're not seeing things happen.
It's
and
a
you're
suck
saying,
fest.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. It is.
Patience.
Yeah. So here's something, and to your point, our current education system, we have STEM, right? That's a big thing, right? The idea of taking things out of curriculum, like philosophy, like the arts, music, right? Things that if you look historically throughout time, some of the most brilliant minds were very well versed in multiple things, right? It wasn't just I was phenomenal in engineering. I was also really good at playing the cello or the violin, and I was also really good at sports, right? This idea of being all a very well-rounded person, right? Why? Because it gives you different perspectives. It gives you a different appreciation. But we live in a time where get the education that's going to get you the job to make the paycheck.
That's it.
That's it.
Remember, like when colleges started, it was an honor to be a liberal arts major.
Absolute, 100%. Right?
That's like what Jefferson proposed when he helped start those schools.
You know, when you take a look at universities, a lot of folks don't realize the background, right? It's unity and diversity. Unifying that's a university, right? You are unifying diverse doctrines and diverse disciplines. That's why I always laugh as a college professor, and you can relate to this, students will come through like, oh, I got to take, you know, the basic classes, the Englishes, I got to take the maths, I got to do all this other stuff, I got to take some electives, but I don't really care about that. I just want to learn about business, right? That is something that most colleges, your first 2 years, you're taking prereqs, you're taking, you know, the generic courses that are required your first 2 years before you get into a specialty. But think about it now from a life perspective. How many folks take the time to diversify their knowledge? Take the time to diversify what it means to be well-read, what it means to have wisdom. Dude, that takes time, which requires patience. But we live in a culture.
And it takes investment.
Absolutely.
Whenever Gino and I are out on the trail, or we do a tour, we're out, speaking. That's the biggest thing we tell people. If you want to become a good leader, and if you want to become a good, you first have to lead yourself.
Absolutely.
How did you lead yourself? By education, like the talks that we do for folks, or like we don't stop learning ourselves. We'll go see people talk. You know what I mean? All the time.
Absolutely.
And if you ever want us to come out and help you and do those kind of things, please check us out on our website.
Yes.
When JD meets PhD, it's JD meets PhD.
Yes.
And then on our Facebook page, What Not to Do with Danny and Gino. Also our YouTube channel, What Not to Do with Danny and Gino.
And certainly, and go check those places out, because there are, outside of there being previous episodes, Danny and I are always posting our thoughts, motivational, inspirational messages, and we'd love to hear from you, right? So leave a comment, let us know your thoughts, and if you can relate, we certainly want to hear that.
The last 3 or 4 shows weren't our idea. They were somebody else's. They were yours.
And we love that. We absolutely love that. So but going back, right, to patience, Danny, in everything that you've done and you've accomplished in your life, when you think of things that required the most patience, right? Were you able to rise to the occasion, to have the patience in that moment?
When I was young, the answer is no.
Why?
Because I needed it now. Or I never let the project marinate enough to succeed.
Right.
So
that's good.
I have a business venture, and my partner's older than I am by a couple years. And we said to ourselves, after years of having other business ventures, we said, look, this isn't going to be a 2-year thing.
Right.
This is going to be a 5 to 10 year thing.
Absolutely.
If you're not willing to ride this out, let's just not start in the first place.
Right.
I thought that was very, I was very impressed with ourselves. Because we had been burned enough in the past by our own mistakes to recognize that if we really want to make this, the company that started isn't what it's going to look like in 3 years, because we're going to have to adapt and change.
Right.
But then we have to have the patience to let it grow and simmer. Our gig, think about how many iterations and what it's looked like. Where the podcast, the speaking, we used to go out and speak to anyone that would let us.
That's right.
Now we'll still do that voluntarily, but then at the same time we still get hired to do that. So what's it going to look like in a couple years? The idea is to not give up on the idea, because you have the foresight and the patience to do it. But again, just like everything in what not to do, it didn't come overnight.
No, 100%. And it's interesting because it starts with the expectation, right? What is the expectation you have set forth for the outcome? So when I think about, golly, okay, so, speaking to law school, I'll speak to my doctoral program, right? So collectively, soup to nuts, bachelor's to doctorate, 13 years of college, right? When I think about me in high school, the idea of saying, I'm going to go to college for 13 years, are you crazy? I said, there's no way. Right. There's no way. I want to get out, get a career, start rock and rolling, right? Do the whole thing. But man, when I look back now, retrospectively, the lessons that I learned along the way, to have the dissertation writing process, being able to go through and carry on discussions with some of the top leaders in academia, and be able to have these challenges with them, academic challenges, to where you're taking a really deep dive into philosophical matters. Listen, you can't have those sorts of conversations unless you have some sort of semblance of patience. And let me tell you, I learned the hard way, because I didn't have patience at first, and I got waxed. I mean, and, oh my gosh, because I didn't think it through, right? And so the skill set of thinking it through, it's a skill set, right? And how do you build, maintain, and make proficient in a skill set? You got to do it over and over, which requires
just
what?
Like training, just like training, just like training.
But you're training this thing, right? And so now take a look at how we operate, how we run in our lives. I think about my marriage with my wife, right? The patience, when I think of when the first year we started dating,
Johnny, the patience that woman has to have.
No. True story. I'm not gonna push back, because
Sadie, we love you.
She is an angel. She is an absolute
God bless
angel.
you.
Yes. How she puts up with me, I don't know. But when I think about the patience I had our first year of dating to now, right, going on almost 2 years being married, it's night and day. But let me tell you, we're the best we've ever been, and we keep getting better, because her patience continues to increase and grow, as does mine, because we both understand, listen, don't just say or do things off the cuff.
So do you think when relationships have trouble is because they lose their patience? Meaning, you're right now, you and Sadie are good, and I don't need you to analyze yourself out for the public. What I mean is, at the beginning it's all rosy, and we're in this growth thing, and we're super
honeymoon
happy,
phase.
right?
Yep.
You're 5 or 6, 7, 8.
Yep.
Maybe 5 to 10, let's say.
Yeah.
When we're just kind of that stale point, somebody hits that stale point.
Right.
Is it because we've lost patience? Because the wire, the wick is short.
So this is good. So if you think about the continuum of growth, right? Especially in a marriage, right? So we as human beings, we're constantly growing. You should be growing.
Sorry.
You should be growing, right? The question is, are you growing together at the same rate, right? Where disjunctures happen is, if I'm going and they're doing this, right? Well, guess what? There's certain life variables, because I am choosing not to include them, because in my mind, it's just something that has to get done. And it's something I have to do to push the career forward, push the hobby forward, push the friendships forward, right? Forgetting the commitment I made the day that we got married, right? And we now operate as a single unit, right? So when you keep that at the forefront, it makes it easier. But the challenge is that sometimes people feel like that's holding them back, right? And when you start feeling that, that's when very raw and real conversations have to happen, right? And that's where compromise comes into play. So when I think about patience and why it's so important, and why the practice of it between us and the skill set is increasing, it's because at the end of the day, I know we both are committed to the same outcome. We may have a different perspective of how we're going to get there, and we're going to work through that. But as long as I know that we're on the same page about where we want to end up, it's fine. We'll work through it.
You know, when you and I have talked about to people about relationship, I'm talking about not just romantic. We're talking about business and friendship.
Yeah.
We look at time frames, sort of like time periods. Back in the old days, our parents and our grandparents' days, patience, time was a thing that everyone was used to. Things took time. So people grew together because they knew that it was time. It would take time to do a thing and you were committed. These days, relationships seem and feel a lot more expendable because our time expectations and maybe perspectives have changed to insta everything. So in a business relationship, as we grow and we grow differently at different rates, we never take the time to go, we need to, because look, business relationship is like a marriage, right? It's like a marriage. We counsel people that all the time. And even in your romantic relationship, as I see my 15-year-old son, 18 is around the corner and he's about to be an adult. I'm like, wow, I
can't believe that.
I know, that's scary though.
Little Tony.
Little
Jeez,
T.
Man.
And you always be like, oh, I must have been a lost 15-year-old. I know I was a lost 15-year-old, but those are different times and the perspectives and the relationships were different, So like getting married at 18 back in my mom's day was different than 18 today.
Of course.
I mean, the maturity levels are completely different and the growth scale is different.
Well, and the expectations were different, right? Because, look, you had people back in the day. My mom, when she was 12 years old, 13 years old, she was working every single day after school. She'd go from Tampa Catholic over to my grandmother's restaurant, and she'd work until close, right? Nowadays, it's, no, I don't want my kid having a job. I want him to focus on school, have fun, play sports, right? I'm not saying it's right or wrong, right? It's different, right? But
no, I get it.
The thing about it, though, too, is as different as times are, the variables and the fundamentals of human behavior, it's still the same. Humans have not changed. Expectations of what humans are supposed to do have.
That's right.
Who has created that change? We have, right? But our essence, our core, how we develop, how it is that we see, that has not changed, right? People forget that because they say, well, times are different. And it's true, times are different because expectations have changed, but it doesn't mean that it negates absolutes that exist one way or the other. Right? And so when I think about patience and when I think about what it takes to be successful with being patient with other people, I think it really does start with an understanding of yourself, an understanding of what do you want out of this relationship and what's the best way to get there. Because if what you want out of the relationship is constant cohesion and constant growth, you're going to go through the due process of listening and having the patience. But if you're always responding and reacting because of insecurities or vulnerabilities that you have, you're going to be emotional.
You're nowhere.
It's exactly
you're going to get nowhere.
And think of how often that happens. Some of the most successful people in the world are some of the most narcissistic people in the whole world, right? And so when we think about what's driving them, what's fueling them, are they performing because, and are they giving out of abundance, or are they giving out of conditional affirmation?
Right, to take. So really they're not giving, they're just taking.
That's it. Because they're giving, but it's actually, they're blanking it for them to fill themselves up.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with them actually giving, right? And so that process, it absolutely is one that I think when you look at, how do I become much more effective with other people? Well, it starts with being patient with yourself, being patient with others. How do you become patient with others? Well, identify what do you want out of that relationship based off of what does it mean to you, right? If you look at all the relationships, people that you pour time into right now, right? What does it mean to you? Why do you do it in the first place? Are they on the same page? And a lot of times, look, you're not going to like the answer. You're not.
No.
You're not going to like the answer, right? So, I think we're there.
Cool. I was getting impatient.
I could tell.
Just waiting for it.
I could tell.
I just think this is like a difficult topic to even like stay on one path about, because patience can go over everything from self-confidence to self-introspective, self-love, loving others, figuring out how you're going to interact with all of those components. I mean, there's a million and one things you could talk about patience. But for sure, we recognize that time can be your friend if you let it.
It should be.
Time before you speak, time before you react, time before you do anything.
Yeah.
Time is your friend.
Yeah. So I think one thing, and this is a really good takeaway for everyone who's listening and watching, time can be the ultimate builder, but time can also be the ultimate destroyer. If you speed it up, you don't give it its ability to do its thing, you'll destroy things very fast.
Right.
If you give it the ability to do its thing, you can build some really beautiful things in your life and beautiful relationships.
All right, we hope everyone got something from that.
Yes.
You got to live inside that window right there.
100%. 100%.
Right.
Episode
What is it, 37?
37. I got to remind this guy all the time. Holy
37?
smokes. Episode 37.
Episode 37. It's in the can.
In the can. Patience.
Wait, before we go, do you know someone asked me, what does in the can mean? And I'm
No.
like, oh,
No.
you youngster. All of a sudden, I'm like the old guy. Look it up. It's called the Google box.
Yes, absolutely.
37 in the can. Danny and Gino, what not to do.
Yes.
We'll see you next time. Have a great one. We
Make
love
it
you
a great
guys.
day, guys.
Make it a great day.